Hey everyone, it's Delilah, and today I'm going to be talking about the romanticization of Persephone and Hades. Some background information is that myths have existed just as long as humans. While myths may have many different definitions, some will agree that they were created to give explanations to things humans can't understand. The myth of Persephone and Hades dates back to 6th century BC. And originally, Hades fell in love with Persephone while he saw her picking flowers. And while Persephone is held in the underworld over time, she falls in love. There's many adaptations, some keeping most of the original idea, but with Persephone not being forced into the underworld and more so a mutual connection. The one that personally there's most knowledge by yours truly is Lore Olympus. It's on the app Webtoon. It's a comic story, and the illustrations are certainly what helps make the story so successful. Allegedly, there's going to be a show, so hopefully that goes well. Lore Olympus is the most popular story on the app. To say people like this adaptation of the story would be an understatement. The author states in the description, the taking of Persephone as it's never been told before. This is true due to many parts in the comic, beginning with how Persephone and Hades meet, as well as how they fall in love. The original myth. Hades fell in love seeing Persephone picking flowers. Personally, I would have been creeped out to be told this later on, but that's just my opinion. Persephone is held in the underworld and falls in love over time, and then many adaptations of the story make it more romantic and have it be more of a mutual, more intimate occurrence when they fall in love, whether it's both insight, love at first sight, or over time. Originally, the god Hades carried her off in his chariot to live with him in the dark underworld. And it can be comforting as a reader to read more of a romance book with two gods they're familiar with rather than a kidnapping of one. Myths and their purpose. Myth has different definitions. Myths are more than mere stories as they serve a more profound purpose in ancient and modern cultures. A lot of the times myths were created to explain things that couldn't be answered at the time, especially with the lack of technology that we now have and the lack of knowledge involving science and natural disasters. Some are now explained with science, for example, the flood mentioned in the Bible in Genesis, and then the romanticization of the stories. While researching examples of just Persephone and Hades, there were 21 books that were the first search results. More are explicit and more romantic stories rather than being more so story-based. A lot of them also have a first-person point of view, with the reader being Persephone. There is one adaptation that overcomes all other search results and is more than just an explicit story to read, and that is Lore Olympus. It makes sense to turn up the romance in these stories, especially from a business point, because sex sells and romance sells. Okay. And now on to Lore Olympus. When finding sources for this, Lore Olympus was actually one of the results that came up when I was on the LC library site, so I thought that was kind of funny. Witness what the gods do. After dark. The friendships and the lies, the gossip and wild parties, and of course, forbidden love. Because it turns out the gods aren't so different from us after all, especially when it comes to their problems. Stylish and immersive, this is one of mythology's greatest stories. The taking of Persephone as it's never been told before. The description for the story is certainly what captivated millions of readers. What other gods are part of the story, as stated, the main focus is Persephone. Lore Olympus is personally the best take on this myth. While it's not as true to the original, if anything, it strays far from it. The details in the art and the storyline itself turns it into its own original story. They meet at a party and fall in love, although Hades is immediately infatuated with Persephone, but he did not kidnap her, unlike the original myth, immediately, which is good. That's a step up. Good for him. And why do we make these stories have more romance? The simple answer is romance sells. Lore Olympus is the most popular webtoon with 1.1 billion views and counting and 5.8 million subscribers and counting. Some can only hope to achieve the amount of success with their story of Persephone and Hades, which is also why I chose these two characters, because I feel like Lore Olympus has caused a surge in stories to be created with those two. The success is also because of the author's writing and illustration. She has a separate illustrator, but the story itself turns the two characters and the taking of Persephone into a story of its own. And each god also has a signature color. For example, Persephone is bright pink and Hades is blue. And people have many different definitions of the word myth as to why they're created. Some will agree that the myths were created to give an explanation to things humans didn't understand at the time. In addition to many different definitions, there's also a multitude of different takes. Dramatization, romanticization, and while Persephone and Hades isn't the only one specifically talked about, their myth isn't the only one that's been adapted or changed to fit a story or to be more romantic. Lore Olympus is without a doubt the most successful adaptation of the original myth, with the story and romance bringing in new readers each week. The appeal of the romanticization of Persephone and Hades is one that is present in today's media.